there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. And yes, this is another Parker Vacumatic, but this one is going to be very interesting. For me anyway, I don't know about you. I said yesterday in my live stream that one of the things that I love the most about my Pen Resurrection Sunday videos is how I never know how they're going to turn out. Some of them I kind of guess that they're going to be easy and they end up being difficult. Some of them I guess that they're going to be very difficult and they turn out to be easy. This one I'm guessing looks like it's going to be difficult and will be difficult. I know that for a fact. I bought this Parker Vacumatic. It's a debutante sized Vacumatic from 1940s. I can't tell because there's no imprint on this barrel whatsoever. It's either been worn off or it's been melted off. My guess is it's the latter. Because, well, let's take a look at this pen. I bought it on eBay and I got it relatively inexpensively because it had no nib. Now, I've just put this nib in there because I bought the pen with no nib because I had a nib that was in need of repair. It's actually broken. And I thought, well, maybe I can put this nib on this pen and fix that nib and make this pen right. The pen in the photos showed it was in really rough shape. Let's take a look overall at this pen. It's a non-blue diamond clip with an unusual cap band that seems to sit very proud, which means that this whole pen has shrunk. That band is spinning around there, so you can see that the metal doesn't shrink, but the celluloid does. It is debutante sized or demi-sized, so it comes in at 120.7 millimeters. 4.75 inches, which makes it a deb or a demi. And if you look at it, it's kind of wonky. So it looks like it has been subjected to some heat. And I can specifically tell because look at those stacked celluloid, how they sort of curve, especially right there. They kind of sway like waves. See how it sort of angles down right there. And in the ad on eBay, they said that this blind cap was not removable. Again, it might have been subject to heat and fused to the barrel. I thought, well, I can fix that. And I actually, without much trouble at all, opened it up. So it sounds like to me that the eBay seller never really tried to open it, which is okay with me. And the pump has a spring to it, but there's no indication of any kind of a diaphragm in there. The barrel is translucent and I can see just the tip of that pump coming through. So one of the issues I'm going to have is whether I can get that pump out of there at all. With this celluloid shrinking so much, it might be almost impossible to get that pump out of that celluloid barrel. The other issue I'll have is whether I can polish up that gold. I don't think that's a big issue. This spinning cap band, that should clean up really nicely, but I should be able to affix that with a little tiny bit of CA glue to keep it in place. Here's another issue. The section has been gouged, like someone took pliers to it. You can see right there, all gouged up. So I'll have to reshape that section a little bit by grinding it down. The feed looks to be in good shape. I've had this nib for a while, and see if I can get closer on it. Maybe you can see that tine has broken off. That's another reason why I wanted to do this, is because this feels very similar to my 1945 Parker Vacumatic Azure Blue Pearl, which I restored, and this pen was almost as bad as this one when I first got it. It had a really scarred up section which I have shaped. It isn't exactly like a Parker Vacumatic section because the flare is sort of gone, but it's nice and smooth. I was really pleased how that came out. But this nib was identical to this one in that it just, one of the tines just snapped right off. So I took my toenail clippers and clipped it off and ground it into one of the nicest writing stubs I've ever written with. And I love this pen. Yesterday on my live stream, I think it was Juicy Louise or Name Like Nobody Else, one of you said something about, oh, there's Doug with his old blue again. So I think I'm going to call this pen my old blue. Oh no, not old blue.
Oh no, it's old
Yes, he shows it off all the time. So I have to repair that nib. That's the first thing to do. If I can't repair that nib, then this pen is worthless. I don't have another nib to go into it. So that's what I'm going to work on first, and then we're going to tackle these issues one by one. The biggest one being whether I can get that pump out of there. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So this is what I want to do with this nib. I want to cut it off like this one, and if you can see the tip on this one, it's been chamfered, curved like that on my writing angle, and it's slightly oblique. That was an accident. That's just the way I cut it. It ended up being slightly oblique in the correct direction. We'll have to see how well I do the cut. And where you cut is going to be important as well. But this is what I want to do based on this diagram. This tip is broken right there. So I'm going to cut it probably just to about there. I'm going to measure this with my calipers to see whether I've got just around, I don't know, 0.8 millimeters to 1 millimeter. That'll determine the width of this stub and the width of my vertical lines. I'm going to cut it there, right there, and then I'll end up with this kind of chisel point right here with all these square corners. If I cut it exactly vertical, that would be good. And then I'm going to take some micro mesh and grind down. I might start with some 400 grit sandpaper just to get the shape, just to sand that round on the end of this chisel tip so that I get this kind of an effect and this kind of a curve on the bottom side of that nib. And then we want to smooth off, sort of knock off all these corners so that there's no bite to them. So it ends up looking like the one on the right. We'll see. The next video will tell. I'm not sure that I want to do the clipping of the nib live on camera because I want to be precise about it. So I'll clip the nib and then I'll show the results. So there's the result. I cut it absolutely square. You can see the point is not too bad because it was cut with nail clippers. It's got a little bit of ridge on it, so I might just flatten that bit out first on some 400 grit, knock those corners off a bit, and then put the shape into it. It'll end up being 0.08, which is just about right. I'm going to try to grind it straight up and down on this 400 grit to flatten out that front bit. And of course 14 karat gold is a lot softer than steel, and so it doesn't take much time to get a shape on those. There, that's not too bad. Nice and flat and square. So now I'm going to try to put the proper writing angle on it, like that, so that it mirrors my other nib. So this is specific to my hand and my writing angle, which is about 40 degrees. And you see the beginnings of that curve just starting. So that's looking pretty good right now. So I'm going to give it a try by dip testing it. This is going to be really rough because that's 400 grit. And you can see I've knocked all of the corners off, top and bottom. That corner looks like it could be lopped off a little bit more. I'm just going to run a very thin shim through the front of that nib to make sure that the channel is clear of dust, and a whole chunk of dust came out. There we go. And I think I'm going to pull that nib and put the nib and the feed in the ultrasonic bath just so that they're nice and clean, so that when I'm dip testing I have some good clean flow of ink. So the section unscrewed really easily. The breather tube came out. There's the feed and the nib. And so I'm going to put all these parts into the ultrasonic bath for a couple of minutes. Pen flush, 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia. And here's the nib out of the bath. It's looking pretty good actually. It'll polish up nicely, and we can finally see a date code on this, and that says 3/7. I don't even remember which pen this came off of, but obviously it was from a pen manufactured in 1937. So now I'm going to put the nib and feed back together again, put it back in the pen, and do some dip testing and polishing of that stub nib to see how successful I've been in cutting it off. So we line up our nib and feed as best we can, hold it top and bottom with some gripper material, and find that sweet spot right there and give it a good push. It's actually easier if you put it back in the barrel. I'll give it something to push against. There we go. Now let's check. That's not too bad. It needs to go in a little bit further. That's good enough for testing. Just going to floss that slit a little bit more. There we go. We'll give that a try. So I'll put that back in the barrel. Get out some paper and my Waterman's, and we'll dip this nib and see if it writes. Crossing my fingers. Doesn't feel much like a stub, but it's surprisingly not scratchy. I haven't got a lot of flow at all, so I need to floss that nib a little bit more to get a little bit wetter. But I'm surprised at how well it writes, even with that kind of a really rough-hewn, cut and sanded with 400 grit sandpaper nib. So I'm going to open up those tines a little bit more so some more ink can flow through those tines, and then I'm going to start going through some micro mesh. Probably going to start about 4,000 and start smoothing it out, and write with it and smooth it and write with it and smooth it all the way up to 12,000, and we'll see how that goes. There, I've flossed a little bit, and we're getting much better ink flow, and we're getting that stub-like character. Thin on the horizontal, thick on the vertical. And we'll get out my new tool that I got from Tom Odo at Gold Spot Pens. These are for sale on Gold Spot. Turn it around the right way. It's a nib width acrylic gauge, which works really well. It's called the MM Pad from Dominant Industries, and you can get this for $9. They're currently sold out at Gold Spot as of this filming, but Tom wrote me yesterday and said they're getting more in stock. So be patient, go back and buy one. They're really, really useful. Let's see what we got here. That's what we got, 0.08, which is exactly what I measured off the tip of the nib. I said 0.08, 0.8 millimeters. There we go. Well, this is amazing. It's writing not too bad. So I think it just needs polishing at this point. I think all the edges feel like they're mostly off, but we'll smooth through from 4,000 through 12,000 grit and see how smooth we can get that stub. I've done a couple of things with this fountain pen since yesterday. I left it overnight with a 0.004 inch or 0.102 millimeter gapping tool between the tines. It was so tight between there I was getting no ink flow whatsoever, and that has given me a much better writing quality to this new stub nib. I'm going to tune it up a little bit more because it's a little bit edgy in certain places. I haven't polished it or anything, but I'll take it out and polish it. But we're going to take that section out of there. We'll work on that later because it needs some surgery as well with all those gouges out of it. Very sad condition. But this barrel is in rough shape. I told you about how it looks a little bit wonky in terms of the stripes keep swimming around like waves. But look at this. Look at that. There's bites out of this. I don't know whether that's melted or what, but I applied a little bit of heat, not too much, but a little bit of heat with my heat gun, and I caused the vac pump to come loose. But this is what's interesting. The pellet receptacle is toast. There's something in there that looks like it's, I haven't looked at this yet, so it's the first time I've had it open. I don't know what this is. I don't know. I'm going to have to punch that out. But this is what was interesting to me. Look how thin this is. Now let's compare it with a regular Parker Vacumatic and take a look at how thin that celluloid is. This has been sanded down or lathed down or ground down or something like that. And that's why the imprint is completely gone off this pen. There's no indication it's Parker. So that thickness of celluloid is gone. I can fix this because I can put a new pellet receptacle on that. Oh, now I know what that is. It's this entire collar is missing. Okay, now that it's stuck inside there. Let's see whether I can get it out. I just didn't recognize it sitting in there. See whether I can push it out from the front.
Danger, danger, force level building to fatal intensity.
Without breaking this barrel. And it split the barrel all the way down the center. Okay, well that's a shame. There's a, and it's really, really brittle and thin. It still won't come out, even though it's broken. Still won't come out. Look at this. The diaphragm all stuck inside there. There, got it out. Okay, there we go. And there's the other side of it. There's the diaphragm. It was actually in pretty good shape, except the fact the pellet receptacle is almost like glass. It is so hardened. I'm going to pull this diaphragm off of here. There we go. And we'll unfold this diaphragm and get that pellet receptacle out of there. The rest of it is inside there. There it is. So there's the rest of the pellet receptacle with the pellet inside. It just broke right there. And that's what caused the whole thing to jam. And just peel the rest of that diaphragm off of that aluminum piece. Well, that's going to take some work too. I'll do that off camera. But the reason that I'm doing that is because if I put this back on, we have a working vacuum pump without the pellet receptacle. But I have a pellet receptacle replacement. So I'll do some surgery on that and I'll replace that and put a diaphragm on it. And then this could be a nice spare part for a future restoration. And the same thing with this. That's actually a very nice working nib. So I'm going to go ahead and polish this section up. I'm going to repair those gouges out of that section as if the pen hasn't just exploded on me. Polish up that feed and the nib and get this vacuum pump working perfectly. We'll say sayonara to this very thin. I mean, what's the story here? What's the story with this very, very thin barrel? Now, if that were a proper thickness, probably would have been able to sustain pushing that end of the vac filler out of the back of that pen. As it is, it's just much too thin and old and brittle. It feels like crystal. So this has been heated and melted. But then again, it was sold to me like this with no nib. I have a blind cap that is actually in good shape. I might polish that up because these Azure blue blind caps are, oh, well, there's a crack on that too. Someone's glued it. Look at that. There's little spots of glue along there. So this was a disaster to begin with. But I'll go ahead and polish up this barrel as well and that cap band and see whether the barrel might be useful in a future restoration. Azure blues are beautiful pens, but I think these pieces are toast. But we might salvage something out of this resurrection after all. But it sure ain't going to be a pen, that's for sure. So it's the next day after my barrel explosion, and I must say I'm taking it very stoically. I've repaired the barrel. It won't accept ink anymore, but it's in one piece. I like that repair. Very stylish. And so I'm taking it very stoically, and Stephen Brown would be proud of me for being stoic at this moment. So now I'm going to repair the vac pump. I have chipped the remaining ebonite off of the end of that rod, and these remaining pieces are just like glass. So yeah, this pen has been subjected to some intense heat. I chipped it all off and cleaned it up with my X-Acto blade, and we're going to replace that receptacle with another one. And I got these from Pen Tooling. There we go. And that just goes on the end of that rod. Now, previous experience tells me I'm going to have to shave that celluloid rod down a little bit to get it to fit into that hole. But also, experience tells me to PTGDSOF. You can read that across there. That is, put the goddamn sleeve on first. This is something that technicians, electricians, audio engineers know very well, that you don't solder something, a connection, wire a plug onto a 100-foot cable and spend hours at getting it perfect and then realize that you forgot to put the sleeve on first. Because if we glue this on first, it won't go over the sleeve. So you have to put the goddamn sleeve on first and then put the pellet on the end of that. PTGDSOF. Just remember it, folks. It's an acronym worth remembering. Put the goddamn sleeve on first. So I'm going to shave that down so that it fits in that hole, and then we're going to add that to the end of the rod with a little bit of crazy glue, cyanoacrylate glue, in this case it's LePage's, and let it dry. I've cleaned up the end of that vac pump, and this is where the diaphragm sits to, and we will put a new diaphragm on it, and it will be ready to be used in another pen. And there we go. I sanded and shaved that down so that it fits on the end of that celluloid rod. Now I'm just going to glue it in place. And just like Brill Cream, a little dab will do ya. And there we go. We'll let that dry. And you may also note remnants of shellac glue on those threads. So this was not only melted into the barrel, it was glued into the barrel as well. So there's the nib all polished up like brand new. Came up very nicely. And the feed is all polished up as well. And then I reshaped the section and polished it up, so it's looking very nice as well. As far as the cap goes, we look very carefully at it. Let's get really close. You might be able to see there's a layer of glue all the way around there. I'm not even sure that this is the original cap ring, but that layer of glue has since broken away because that cap ring is spinning. And you can see there's all kinds of gack all over it. I'll try to polish it up. Well, I'm thinking I'll just save this for another day. It's looking very thin as well and shrunken, and we'll save that clip for another day as well. But I'm going to take this pump and I'll save that for another day. All it needs is a diaphragm on it, and it will work perfectly. So I thought about what I might do here. I might take this nib, now it's writing so nicely, and put it back in the pen that it was donated from, which is this one right here. It's from 1940, and it's a double-jeweled fountain pen, Vacumatic, with something going on inside there. It doesn't look like it works. But we'll see whether we can get that one out. And it unscrews. Yeah. So there's an old desiccated diaphragm there. And now that I've repaired the nib, I can put that nib on that fountain pen and restore it next. And that will save these parts for another pen. A section only fits a Deb size, but that nib can go on this pen because that's where it came from. So now I've examined the cap a little bit more closely with my loupe, and that band doesn't look like anything I've seen on a Parker before. If anybody out there knows cap bands from Parker Vacumatics, let me know if you've ever seen this pattern, this thickness of a cap band. And when I polished it, I put this on my jewelry polishing cloth. It's come up all copper. So it's only gold plated if it was ever gold to begin with. It never really looked gold. And it looks like, and we see there's a bit of a weld mark or a crack right there. And the clip doesn't look so great either because it says Arker. And the P, it doesn't even say Arker, it says Erker. The P and the A have been struck off or ground off or something like that. Maybe this is a second? I don't know. It's incredibly pitted and just does not look genuine. If it is genuine, it means it was something that was discarded by Parker because it was so poorly made. I don't know. So this whole pen has been very unusual. From the very thin celluloid that looks like it's been melted away to nothing, the cap as well, even that stacked celluloid on the cap looks like it's a little wonky. So you live and you learn. So I certainly learned a lot from trying to restore this fountain pen. I've learned that if it's too good to be true, it usually is. So what are my thoughts about this non-resurrection? Well, you get what you pay for, number one. This pen was about $35 US. It looked like it was in bad shape, but I thought maybe I could bring it back to life because I thought the only thing that it didn't have was a nib. And I had a nib that was broken that I was looking forward to restoring and seeing whether I could make it into a stub. Well, that was the good part of the review. I have made this into a stub nib that actually writes very, very nicely, very smooth. And I'm probably going to put this back in the pen that it came from. But I also found it fascinating because it's like doing archaeology and trying to discover how something became the way it was. Why was this barrel so thin? Why was the celluloid so brittle? Why is that cap band so weird?
You're weird.
Maybe some of you out there that have Parker Vacumatic experience might be able to tell me one or two things about this pen, where you think it might come from. Why don't we have an imprint on this barrel? Does celluloid shrink that much, or was this pen subjected to a lot of heat? My guess is that this pen was housed somewhere very, very hot for a very long time, and the whole thing shrunk up. It doesn't explain why that cap band is the way it is, but it does explain why that barrel is so thin. So this will be for parts. I'm thinking that if it hadn't broken, I don't think I would have allowed anyone else to write with this, because it just feels so fragile. It feels like a piece of glass. But with a Band-Aid on it, now it's a nice curiosity. And the Vacumatic pump will be given up for another pen at some point. And now that I've restored that section and that feed, those will be good parts for something in the future as well. So there you have it. I put a poll out to my community on YouTube and asked whether I should be showing my failures as well as my successes. And most people said, yeah, we want to see your failures too because they're a lot of fun. And you can't expect to be successful every time. But when you are unsuccessful, you learn a few things. I learned a lot from trying to do this resurrection. I got some practice at reshaping a section. I got some more practice at making another stub nib out of a broken nib that just was not usable at all. And now it's beautiful and will go into another pen. And it was also an interesting journey in terms of an investigation to try to figure out what the hell this pen was, where it came from, what happened to it. If they could only speak to us, they could tell us what happened to them during their lifetime. Is this even a genuine Parker? With PA smashed off of that clip, you wonder whether this might have just been a second and someone's applied another band to it or something like that. It's just really, really weird. So I broke it and I fixed it. And I can dip it in some ink and say, if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them, successful or not. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.